Hello and welcome to another Digital Workplace Updates video with some updates you need to know. I'm your host, David Francoeur, and I'm happy to bring you some updates from the world of Microsoft 365.
ToDoLead is a remote-first company based out of Canada.
What makes a world-class Microsoft 365 intranet and digital workplace?
Jumping right into it, we'll start with SharePoint Online today. We've got a couple updates, one of which is pretty big, the Portal Scheduler. This is a really great tool that previously was housed just in PowerShell, but now has a lot more functionality and has been elevated into the UI itself. In addition, it's really now very well coupled with some other tools that were out there, including the Page Diagnostics tool, which some of you may have used as the Edge extension. What it does now is it requires you to ensure that you actually pass that diagnostic, and when you do, you can actually go ahead and set up your wave-based rollout of a portal. So you can configure here, as you can see, some redirects that allow different groups of users to come in at different times. You can set up your waves, which are essentially just windows of time when you want different groups to start entering the new portal, and then review it all before you're ready to publish it, and then the system takes care of the rest. So I really like that I'm seeing this in the UI. It makes the experience a lot easier to follow, and it gives you more confidence, I think, that you're going to be doing things correctly. So this is a really good update, and personally I'm excited to start using this. Another one that seemingly looks small on the surface but has been a huge ask from so many communicators for so long is, where are my accordions? Where are my tabs? Why can't I do that? And for a long time that wasn't available until recently. Now we see the first glimpse of it here as collapsible sections coming out. We don't yet have the ability to put things into true tabs, but we do have this expandable and collapsible accordion approach. Now this works really well for content-heavy pages, especially big blocks of text, but it can be used in a variety of ways, really, to make a page easier to consume and give some agency back to the end user to decide, what really they want to see and interact with on a given page. Now, if you're looking for this, you want to see if you have it in your tenant, you have to go and edit a section on the left-hand side of your page, and you should see this new option of make this section collapsible. And then you'll see a couple other little things you can play with. I think it's definitely early days for this. There's a lot more I'd like to see and more configurability in how things are presented, the padding, the titles, and all that. But for now, it's a really great start, and it's a first step towards a potentially very useful utility. All right, let's move on now to a much larger swath of updates in the context of Microsoft Teams. First and foremost, we have their rollout here of PowerPoint Live translations, and deliberately using the word PowerPoint Live here to call out that you have to be presenting your PowerPoint using this new method, which is built into Teams. And when you do that, you'll now be able to start seeing the ability to allow end users to translate the content into certain preset languages of their choosing. So it's not every language that's supported, but it's a good number of them to start off with. And this could be very, very useful, especially if you're presenting to a multilingual audience and you're finding it hard to figure out how you should be going about translating slides. Do you translate the whole deck, which of course is a lot of effort, or potentially do you just do this, and maybe there's just a few users in the audience that really would prefer to see something, for example, in French versus the English, and this could be an easy way to do that. Now, only time will tell how well this works. And of course, it's only going to be able to translate text, so diagrams, images that have embedded text, all that stuff is not going to be translated, so keep that in mind, but I'm curious to see what kind of experience people have. Next, another interesting one from Teams, not a huge innovation here by any means, but one challenge organizations have had a little bit with the rollout of Teams is enabling organization-wide backgrounds. Currently, the only way to really do that is to ask every single user in your organization to set up their own Teams backgrounds that match a corporate standard. Very hard to enforce, of course, and even just distributing them can be challenging, right? A lot easier if you could set some of those team backgrounds at a corporate level and let users then select from the gallery of those that have already been made available. Now, currently this is only in preview, And it looks like that when this rolls out, it's actually going to have a cost attached to it, requiring an advanced communications license, which personally I hope they move away from and let this become something that everyone can use, because it is something that I think a lot of organizations are looking to standardize as they mature more and more in the use of Teams. Another smaller one, but potentially great in terms of time savings, is the ability to automate the recording of Teams meetings. Now, this hasn't been just dropped into tenants. It's been around for at least a couple months. But it's an easy one to miss, because this settings menu for meeting options I find is a little bit hard to get to, not super obvious. So keep in mind that you do have to get to kind of the settings of settings of a meeting after you've actually set it up, before you can really see these things. So you can see there's an option now to record automatically, which is great. It's one less thing to worry about if you're setting up a series where you're always going to want to record, and it's just one less thing that you can forget, right? And let's face it, we've all been in that position where we're 5 minutes, 10 minutes into a meeting, we've forgotten to set up the recording, and we're doing it a little bit late. So it's nice to have one less thing here. The only thing I wish I would love to see would be just making this a little bit easier to turn on, as you're setting up the meeting to begin with, would be nice. I, at least, for one, haven't found a way to do that. Moving ahead, we have another interesting enhancement, which relates to the spotlighting feature in Teams. It's always used as a way to really put the focus on a specific individual in a conversation, which is great. If, a certain person is speaking, but you have a large amount of people that have their videos turned on, it's a great way to just say, hey, this is the person that we really want to focus our attention on. But this was a little bit challenging if this was meant to be a dialogue between a couple people, or even like a round table between 3 or 4 people. You can only ever spotlight one person. Now that's changing, and we're seeing the ability now to spotlight a number of people at a given time, which is nice to see. We're also seeing some more flexibility starting to roll out with the way that we present content, and as someone who presents a lot, this is a welcome addition. I like flexibility, and I'm excited to try either the side-by-side mode or the reporter mode, which just allows people to see you as well as your content at the same time. And I think research is showing that having our eyes having to focus and unfocus on different things on the screen quite a bit is taxing and tiring. And so the more we can do to make that easier for our viewers is going to be a good thing. So look for that around the August to September timeframe, so that could land anytime. Playback speed in terms of recordings is also nice. If you're someone who often or even infrequently has to catch up on a meeting you've missed and have been frustrated by sometimes the pace of the recording, and instead, just trying to move the cursor ahead in the meeting to find the right spot, that's always been available. But if you ever wanted to just listen to the recording at 1.5 times or 2 times the speed to really just try to get through it quickly, the only option previously was to download the video, watch it on a client, some video playback application on your computer, and speed it up there. I really like that now I can just do this within the context of the recording itself. One less thing for me to do, and it's less space being eaten up on my computer from these recordings. So I like to see this. All right, on the topic of Viva Insights, we continue to see some progressive iterative improvements here, and one of them here is the kind of Pomodoro-based timer technique of splitting up your work blocks and your rest blocks into chunks of time. And having the timer there is a good way to ensure that you're kind of sticking to that plan. I like here that we have not only the timer, but some integration with the to-do and tasks, so that I can actually kind of have a very focused session trying to work through some of my tasks and make sure that I'm keeping an eye on the time I've set aside for that. Now, one that some people may use, others may not find that useful, is a little bit of integration here with Headspace Music now, so that if you want some of that background noise to help you focus, it's not another application you have to necessarily turn to. Will this replace Spotify for me in my focus sessions? Probably not, but it's cool to see more integration. One little quick tip here, if you are using this, it's really useful sometimes to actually pop out the Viva Insights app as a separate window, just to make sure that you can kind of have that timer and that music playing uninterrupted while you move about and maybe doing other things in Teams. Now, on the topic of this umbrella term of hybrid work, or what I would describe more as, more seamless collaboration in real time with other people within Microsoft 365. We're seeing some really cool announcements here and more visuals to back them up. So a lot of excitement here for me, for one, seeing not only innovations in Whiteboard, where it's a lot easier and more intuitive to work in real time with others, but also in other contexts, like in Teams, coming up with next steps or an agenda together with others, but not necessarily doing it in an application like PowerPoint, but just doing it right in the context of Teams. That's really cool, and I really like seeing kind of where people are at in the actual context of the content, and seeing this here for next steps, seeing this as well, even in the context of a table, like working through a table of content together is really a cool idea. Now, obviously, there's some really interesting technology backing this all up and making this possible. But even just from the end user perspective, I think where I'm focused here, it's really interesting. Now, this is only in preview right now, so if you're one of the lucky few that are getting to play with this, lucky you, but also share some of your feedback on this. I'd love to hear how people are using this. Moving ahead now, and let's talk a little bit about search. I mean, so much of the digital workplace today is centered around a search-based experience, whether you even realize it or not. And there's really quite a few. I think by my count this week, there's about 55 to 60 items on the roadmap that are either in development or rolling out that relate to search. So there's a lot to keep tabs on, but there's a lot of potential value and benefit here. So let's go through some of the really cool ones. One of them that stood out in the last few weeks is image search. So in your tenant, you may have noticed, or you may not have, a subtle addition here in the verticals that you should see in the out-of-the-box search results page, and one now dedicated to images. We also see one for Power BI, which I'll come back to. The images one is not only what it appears to be on the surface, which is a dedicated search that's only going to bring back images, but there's also something else there that's actually a lot more valuable, and that's this auto tagging of images to make them a lot more searchable. So when we actually have images in a library, we now have a tags column that's automatically going to be added for us by the system. And it's going to do a few things. First of all, it's going to allow an end user or publisher to put in their own tags, which is obviously the perfect state. But at the end of the day, we know that a lot of people don't always get to these tags. So what happens if it's left blank? Next, we have an option where if you're bringing in images from an image provider like Adobe Stock or Getty Images that already has really great embedded tags, it's actually going to pull those in and use those, which is really the best possible option. So you see a couple at the bottom of my screen here that have a lot of really great keywords. Now those are all going to be automatically searchable. I don't have to know that I'm looking for Adobe Stock 109868254. I can do something more natural. And then lastly, Microsoft is even allowing some auto tagging to happen, a little bit of machine learning and AI baked into this, but they are limiting these auto tags to just a list of 30 basic tags. So you noticed in some of my images on my screen here, some of them are tagged with things like text and person. So it's doing a little bit of that tagging for us, but let's face it, 30 tags is not a lot. So you're going to have a lot of images that won't have anything, or that are going to have a very generic tag like text, right? So that's not always going to be super helpful. So I imagine here the hope from Microsoft is that people will want to invest in a little bit more of the kind of AI builder and some of that type of functionality. But hopefully they'll also maybe relax a little bit on the 30 number here and increase that to a higher number. Another interesting thing on the search results side is what they're calling result clusters. And now we could bring in using data sources, content from third-party systems into dedicated verticals on our pages before. But one nice thing is to be able to also show them in context somehow in the all results view. And that's now possible with result clusters, which allows you to essentially create a block. Like I have here on my screen here with Contoso Wiki, which I have 2 results coming from there. But in the context of this block, it's now more clear to me where these are coming from. So a bit of context goes a long way with search, and this is an interesting thing that you can choose to turn on. You can also turn it off if you don't like it. But cool idea, and I like that because it makes these results from other systems a lot more helpful now in the all view, whereas before, you were probably having to force people to a dedicated vertical. Now, in the context of search, you may, scratch your head on why I'm showing the Bing app here, but it's an interesting lens from which to look at innovations that are happening in the Bing app, specifically here the Bing mobile app. So I installed it on my Android device earlier this week and was playing around with it a little bit. And I think one of the things you see with Bing in general is that Microsoft is testing out some of the new features that are going to come eventually into Microsoft's 365, but they're doing it first in Bing. So it's a great way to see or get a glimpse of what's coming earlier. An example here, like my third screenshot, where we have a dedicated conversations view. We know that's on the roadmap for Microsoft 365. We don't have it yet, but you see a very early glimpse of what that could look like here, where we're able to search through a dedicated vertical of Yammer and Teams conversations, which is going to be really helpful if you're someone like me that is not always remembering very clearly in which context a conversation happened, right? So I like it from that context, but it's also, when you look at the Bing mobile app, even the Bing experience in the desktop, it is a good entry point. They've made it a good entry point into corporate resources, right? So here, I'm in the work tab of the Bing mobile app, and I see a whole lot in a very compact amount of space. So I see, people, groups, sites, files, conversations. I see my Power BI reports as well. So in some ways, this is a really good kind of channel into my corporate content from my mobile device all in a single place. And so I like kind of the narrative of where this is going, and I'm sure that this is not necessarily seeing huge uptake from a corporate point of view, but it's something that I think will become more and more useful to look at, especially organizations that have a lot of those road warriors that really just need to get to their access to content quickly. One thing that might be very useful for them is something like this, which is just giving them a search-based experience in their pocket. Now let's move to an area that some may feel like has been neglected for a long time. It's certainly on the desktop side. It hasn't had much of a visual refresh for a while, but Outlook in the web has actually been growing at a pretty fast rate for a long time, to the point where we're actually seeing quite a few users have switched to the web view being their kind of primary method of utilizing this application. So in the Outlook space, we're seeing a lot of cool things. I wanted to call attention to a few. One is the organization browser, which is really, I think, a really fantastic new take on the organization browser, organizational kind of hierarchy in a visual kind of experience. Now, this is only available if you're part of the Office Insider preview channel. You won't see it otherwise, but it's a great glimpse into what's coming. And my only hope, fingers crossed here, is that this experience is available in other places than just Outlook. I would love to see this as part of an intranet, for example, in SharePoint or in Teams. So hopefully this is available out of the gate in a few different mediums, because I can see it being very valuable. Now, another interesting one that caught my eye is the meeting scheduler. Now, I think we all know that we're in more and more meetings, especially with the pandemic. That has increased quite a bit. And, I think as we increase those meetings, we're jumping between meetings quite a bit. We have less time than we did before to schedule these meetings, but we're doing more of that, right? So I think anything that we can find that is going to reduce that, that effort to schedule, especially meetings that involve a lot of people, which can take a long time. Microsoft's research is saying that, anywhere between 6 and half an hour just to schedule a meeting. If you're scheduling meetings, that could be your whole day right there, depending on your role in an organization. So I think one thing that they're trying out here with the meeting scheduler is infusing a bit of AI into it. And so this is kind of under the umbrella of Cortana as your helper here, where if you sign up for this, there is a cost. You can use Cortana here to basically try to take the heavy lifting of the meeting scheduling itself, do the coordination, figure out the best time, recommend a time slot, and then actually book it as well. So that's great. There's even some escalation to a real human if Cortana is running into problems that's baked into this. There's quite a bit, so definitely read up on this if you're interested. I definitely see it being valuable for certain roles especially makes sense as ones that would start with people like project managers or others that are doing a lot of coordination work. This could really take a big chunk of work off their plates and allow them to focus on other things. All right. Now, also on the topic of Outlook, if you are one of those people that are using the web experience quite a bit, or even if you're not, but you're finding that you're often wanting to just keep a quick eye on things like your inbox or your calendar. For me, as you're jumping from meeting to meeting, sometimes, you're finishing a meeting and you're just wanting to do that double check. When's my next meeting? Is it right away, or do I have a break? Can I go to the bathroom? And this extension in Edge is actually quite slick. Really like the UI, and it is in kind of quote unquote preview right now, but it definitely does what it's supposed to do. It's not supposed to necessarily replace your full, Outlook experience. It's obviously a much more minimal, amount of real estate that's available, but it does do a lot of things really well. Like if you want to, take a peek at your inbox, if you want to take a peek at your calendar, it works great for that. So definitely give that a shot, especially if you're someone who's already using the web experience. Anyway, that's it for me, and looking forward to connecting with you guys in another couple weeks. Have a great day. Bye.